Hey everyone, I've been playing guitar, dragging heavy amplifiers onto sticky dive bar stages, and completely obsessing over my tone for over 30 years now. I'm not a studio technician, and I'm definitely not an engineer. I'm just a guitar player. But I remember blowing entire paychecks on overdrive pedals, totally convinced the next little metal box would magically turn my basement rig into a massive stadium rock setup. Well, today, we need to have a hard, honest conversation about the gear we buy and the sounds we hear in our heads for this explainer. The biggest mistake almost every guitarist makes starts the moment they hear their favorite record. They think they're listening to a guitar amplifier. They're not. They're listening to an entire recording chain that's been carefully shaped by microphones, compressors, EQ, and mixing decisions. If you've spent years buying the same gear as your heroes but still can't get their tone, today you'll finally understand why. So, Block 1, the Great Tone Illusion. When you stand in front of your amp, strike an open chord, and feel the floor physically shake right beneath your boots, that is the raw amp in the room. It's big, it's messy, and the sound bounces off every single wall before it ever hits your ears. But that classic rock vinyl you grew up idolizing, that is fundamentally different. What you see here is the actual path your hero's signal takes on a record. It starts at the guitar and hits the amp. But then, it immediately hits a microphone. From there, it usually travels through 100 feet of copper wire, going into a mic preamp, which is just a piece of studio gear used to boost the signal up. Then it goes through a massive mixing console and finally lands on a master tape. The amp is literally just step 2 out of 6. The rest of that long, complicated chain is where the album tone is actually built. And here is the absolute core of the problem. What your ear hears is the whole room. You hear the reflections off the hard walls, you feel the wood floor vibrating, you hear the moving air combining from all the speakers hitting you all at once. But a microphone in a recording studio, it's usually shoved right up against the cloth grill of the amp, just inches away from a single speaker cone. It completely ignores the room you're standing in. It's like trying to look at a giant, beautiful painting through a drinking straw. You are only getting a restricted, microscopic view of the sound. Let's get into Block 2. The microphone changes everything. We have to realize that the microphone is the most critical physical boundary in the entire recording process. Microphones are simply not ears. Picking a microphone forces a massive tonal choice on your sound before you even play a single note. If a producer grabs a ribbon microphone, which is an old-school, fragile type of mic, it rounds off all your harsh high notes and gives you a thick, dark syrup of a sound. If you're a 45-year-old guitarist sitting at home wondering why your favorite 70s record sounds so warm and heavy, it's probably because of that ribbon mic. Now, if they grab a standard dynamic microphone, like the classic Shure SM57 you see everywhere, it gives you an aggressive, punchy bite that cuts right through the band. Same amp, entirely different starting point. Think about this. Two people could be standing in the exact same room, hearing the exact same amplifier. But what goes to the tape depends entirely on where that little microphone is pointing. Just moving that microphone a single inch across the front of the speaker dramatically alters the brightness, the warmth, and the heavy pick attack you end up hearing. Here is how that physical reality actually works. And man, I really wish someone had explained this to me 20 years ago before I bought all those expensive pedals. Point the microphone at dead center at the middle of the speaker cone, and it will slice your ears off with bright, biting treble. It's harsh. Slide it just a little off center, and the sound instantly gets darker and much warmer. Push it all the way out to the outer edge of the cone, and those harsh, piercing highs are heavily rolled off, giving you a thick, smooth, almost muddy sound. When you look at how those frequencies measure out, the physical reality is undeniable. As that microphone moves from the center out toward the edge, those high, piercing sound waves just drop off a cliff. Think about what that means. The amp didn't change at all. The tone knobs on the front panel didn't move a single millimeter. The microphone just moved 2 inches to the left, and the entire high end of your guitar tone vanished into thin air. Now, sometimes an engineer will use multiple microphones to capture different flavors of the exact same amp, but when they do, they have to manage phase. Phase is simply what happens when two microphones aren't perfectly aligned in time. It's like two ocean waves crashing into each other head-on and flattening the water out entirely. Instead of sounding huge and powerful, the guitar suddenly sounds small, hollow, and painfully weak, almost like it's coming through an old telephone. That brings us to Block 3. The studio is another instrument. For this, we need to move out of the physical recording room and into the control room. This is where producers actively sculpt, slice, and build the final sound you hear on your stereo. You know those legendary classic rock riffs that sound larger than life? They don't sound huge because of one magical amplifier. They sound huge because of double tracking.
That means the guitarist plays the exact same part twice, and the engineer pans them hard, pushing one recording all the way into the left speaker and the other recording all the way into the right speaker. You aren't hearing one guy playing a loud amp. You are hearing an army of guitars cloned and stacked on top of each other.
Sometimes they fake that thick sound using automatic double tracking, or ADT. This is a studio trick where they use a tape machine delay to instantly create a slightly shifted copy of a track. The engineers over at Abbey Road actually invented this tape trick back in 1966 for the Beatles. It slightly delays the duplicate signal, tricking your brain into thinking there are two distinct players in the room. It proves that album tone has always relied heavily on studio manipulation, long before modern computers were a thing.
So engineers combine all these layered guitars using three main tools. First is panning, which we talked about, splitting the guitars across the left and right speakers. Next is compression. Compression squishes the loud volume spikes down and boosts the quiet details up, giving the guitar maximum consistency and a heavy punch straight to your chest. Finally, equalization, or EQ. This is adjusting the bass, middle, and treble on the studio mixing board to carve out a specific space for the guitar so it doesn't fight with the bass player or the crashing cymbals. These tools specifically strip away that raw, messy, amp-in-the-room feel to make the guitar fit perfectly into a recorded mix.
Moving on to Block 4, why copying gear doesn't work. This directly addresses the painful reality of why buying the exact same guitar and pedal board as your guitar heroes will still leave you totally frustrated. You might drop thousands of dollars on a vintage Stratocaster, a specific vintage fuzz pedal, and a roaring 100-watt Plexi amp. But think about the missing ingredients. You don't have the heavy vintage Neumann microphones. You don't have the analog tape machine adding its own grit to the sound. You don't have the massive, glowing mixing desk or the legendary recording engineer tweaking the knobs. You're buying the raw ingredients, but you're missing the million-dollar kitchen and the master chef.
And let's definitely not forget the player holding the instrument. Tones are intimately tied to playing technique and attitude. Even if you somehow bought the exact vintage gear and the exact microphones, playing a classic riff with the wrong attitude and a weak pick attack will never, ever translate properly. How hard you hit those strings with your light hand dictates the grit and the tone before a single drop of electricity is even involved.
Let's wrap it up with Block 5, the practical takeaway. Look, I want to give you some actionable advice on how to stop wasting your money and start understanding your own sound. Step 1, listen to your amp in the room. Stand in front of it, play a chord, and learn what your equipment naturally sounds like without any studio processing. Step 2, understand and accept the hard truth that a microphone will always change that sound. Learn where to point the mic on the speaker to get the highs or the lows you actually want. And step 3, stop chasing ghosts from finished records. You are taking a single amplifier into your spare bedroom and trying to recreate a mixed, mastered, layered, million-dollar studio creation. It's a fight you will never win, so stop beating yourself up over it, man.
Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on as we finish up here. Have guitarists spent decades buying the wrong gear? Or have we simply been chasing a sound that only exists after the recording engineer finishes the job?